Hello and welcome to my little bookish corner of the internet. My name's Harriet. Today I'm going to be talking through the festive books and other books that I read in November. Thanks so much for your patience on this one. I know that it's a little bit late. So in November my goal was to read a load of festive books so I could give some recommendations to you. I have put that video up now. Unfortunately, a lot of books that I did read in November I probably wouldn't recommend just because I didn't absolutely love them. However, there are some good ones, so if you want some extra recommendations then keep watching this video. If you just want some festive reading recommendations then I'll leave that video link down below for you to check it out. But let's get started. So the first book that I read in November was A Surprise Christmas Wedding by Philippa Ashley. This is one of your typical cheesy romance novels but with a festive setting. So our main character is a event planner / wedding planner, and she gets told by her boss that she has the responsibility of planning a very last minute surprise Christmas wedding that only the bride and groom are going to know about until last minute. So when she goes to meet the bride and groom, it turns out that it is her ex-boyfriend and his new girlfriend. So drama ensues. There's lots of funny moments within this book, loads of very sweet moments as well, obviously following our main character's love life, as well as her feelings that she still has for her ex and trying to figure out how she feels, what she's going to do in this situation. There's also quite a lot of extra story within this apart from the rom-com side, so we do see a lot of our main character's family and the things that they're going through, daily regular issues, family issues, health issues as well. It is actually a little bit dark at times, but I do think the romance then helps to bring you into a lighter mood. It was a very easy book to read, however I did find that it was quite predictable, so I sort of knew who she was going to end up with within the first 20-30 pages. However, it was a really enjoyable read and definitely worth giving a go if you like that kind of book. If you like those cheesy romance novels, then I think you'll really enjoy this, especially if you're looking for something to get you in the festive spirit. But for me personally, it just gets a standard 3-star. Didn't hate it, didn't love it, but I am glad that I read it. The next book that I read was a collection of letters from J.R.R. Tolkien, and this is called Letters from Father Christmas. So this is a collection of the letters that he sent to his children throughout the years when they were growing up. This is just so cute. If you can get your hands on it, I definitely recommend it. Just think it would be something really nice to have on your shelves and flick through when you feel like it. There's illustrations throughout as well. Obviously it isn't really fiction, it's a collection of the letters that he wrote that are fictionalized. But there is no story other than you just reading what he wrote down, and they don't necessarily correlate in a chronological order. Some of them are a little bit random, some of them are shorter, some of them are longer than others, but it was very cute, so I gave it a 4-star rating. I'm definitely going to reread this and keep it on my bookshelves. The next book that I listened to was kind of a wild card. I found it on the Libby app and thought, yeah, I'm going to reread that, so I listened to it as an audiobook. And that is Gifts by Ursula Le Guin. I'm not going to say too much about this. I'll leave the previous review that I did for this book and for the trilogy down below. It might be a little bit embarrassing. I think my editing back then was not quite as good as what it is now. Not that it is very good now either, so you can imagine the quality of it, but I'll leave that link down below just in case you do want to check it out. But Gifts is the first in a fantasy trilogy written by Le Guin, who you know I absolutely adore, and the characters within this trilogy all have different gifts, different powers that are passed on through their families, and each one is different depending on your bloodline, obviously what power you get. But our two main characters don't want to use their powers anymore. We're finding out what happened to make them feel that way, different family issues, relationship issues, and also opposing clan wars and things like that. Just a really interesting fantasy trilogy, and I really loved re-listening to this first book. I didn't necessarily love the audiobook, finding it very hard to find narrators that I enjoy listening to. But regardless, I really enjoyed it. It still is at a 5-star rating for me. It hasn't made it go down, even though the narrator was maybe not my favourite. But I definitely recommend this trilogy if you're looking for something quite light-hearted in terms of the fantasy side of things, but that deals with a lot of societal issues, relationships and character building. That is mainly what Le Guin's writing is about. The next book I read unfortunately was not one that I loved, and that is The Wolf Princess by Catherine Constable. I picked this up at a book swap and I was really excited to read it. It sounded a little bit Red Riding Hood / The Snow Queen, which I love those children's stories. I think they're amazing. We're following our main character as she goes on a school trip to Russia, and she meets a princess there, and there's some strange things going on. I really can't say more than that because the book is only I think 200 pages long, but it felt like it was going on forever. I personally didn't really enjoy this one. I felt that the characters were really unlikable, particularly our main character's best friends. They are absolutely horrible to her. I know that children can be horrible to each other, but this just took it to a whole new level. I found the characters to be very stereotypical depending on what kind of person they were. on their accent, on the fact that some of them live in Russia and some of them live in England. I don't know, it just wasn't a book that I really loved. It wasn't terrible, and I probably would recommend it for younger readers, which obviously that is who it is aimed at. But for me, it only gets a 2.5 star rating. I think it had some really good descriptions of the lands that the characters are in, but the character development just absolutely was not there for me, and the story did seem a little bit strange towards the end, almost as if it wasn't piecing together correctly. However, the next book that I read, I kind of knew that I would love this, as it is a reread. However, I haven't read it in many, many years, well before I started BookTube and Bookstagram. And that is A Frozen Heart by Elizabeth Rudnick. This is one of the Disney Frozen retelling stories, and this one is actually following Anna's perspective and Hans's perspective. So we don't see a lot from Elsa, but we do see a lot more from Hans and his reasoning for being the person that he is, his emotions when he is doing what he is doing. It is following the story of Frozen, and not too much changes apart from you seeing the different perspectives from Hans' side and seeing a bit more of Anna's emotions as well. But I absolutely love this, definitely recommend it for any Frozen fans, and I'm really, really glad that I reread it. It stays at a 5-star rating for me. And I mean, obviously I am a huge Frozen fan as well. And then we get back to the more Christmassy books. So next up on the list, I read Miracle on Regent Street by Ali Harris. This is actually quite a chunky romance novel with a Christmassy setting. So I got this as part of my Christmas mystery book box, which again, I'll leave that link down below if you want to check that out. I did do a Halloween one as well. Really fun idea, and I think this would be perfect for a gift if you don't know what someone likes to read, but you know that they enjoy reading. You could get them one of these mystery sets and they'll get some little snacks and goodies to go with their book that they're going to be reading over the Christmas period. But anyway, this book is following our main character who feels like no one really sees her for who she is. No one actually seems to even remember her name or who she is, which to me personally didn't seem very realistic. But she wants to change that, and one day someone mistakes her for someone else that works within her workspace, and she kind of rolls with it and gets herself into a little bit of a sticky situation. At the same time, she is doing her best to save the department store that she's working in because she has very personal, close connections to it and doesn't want it to go down. So she's trying to save the store by decorating it overnight, and no one knows that is her that is doing it, but she's trying to save the store and at the same time trying to become a better person and also someone that people recognise and remember. So there's a fair bit going on actually in this novel. However, I do think that was a little bit too long. I don't really think that some of the parts in there were very necessary, but I did really like the relationships that were built up in this. As unrealistic as some of it would seem, I really liked her relationships with her friends, her co-workers. While this was very cute and had lots of really good descriptions of Christmas in department stores and Christmas on Oxford Street, it didn't blow me away. I didn't absolutely hate it, and I do think that it would be a good book for some people, but for me it was very average, so I gave it a 3-star rating. Same as the next one actually, so this was another audiobook that I listened to. I suppose you could call this a non-fiction, however it is based on folktales that have been passed down through the ages. So it's called Animal Folktales of Britain and Ireland by Sharon Jaxties. Again, I am not finding many audiobooks where I enjoy the narrator and the way that they are speaking, so I do think that that did put a little bit of a dampener on this, but I really, really enjoyed this. It was nice to listen to these old folk tales about foxes and the animals that live within the world. It was just very interesting to see where some people thought they came from, all the myths and legends that come with those creatures. Very, very cute, and I think if you're looking for an easy non-fiction to pick up, then this would be a good one. I think it would make a good gift as well if you know any people that are really into nature and animals. The next book I'm not going to say too much about because I have done sort of a reaction video to me reading this book, which I'll leave linked down below, but that's Hogfather by Terry Pratchett. All you need to know is this is a crazy fantasy book that is extremely funny, very Christmassy, and I absolutely loved it. So it got a 5-star rating from me, and I can't wait to try more from this author. The next book that I read was Midnight in Everwood. Now this book is a retelling of The Nutcracker, and I don't know if it's supposed to be aimed at a YA audience or not, because there is one scene in here that doesn't seem very suitable for teenagers, but everything else feels very YA, if not a little bit lower than that. But if you've ever read The Nutcracker, this follows a pretty similar premise, following a young girl who gets transported to this magical land. There's a lot of sweet inspired buildings and sweet inspired places that she visits. She's also an aspiring ballerina in a society that doesn't really allow her to do that. Her parents don't want her to become a ballerina. They want her just to get married to this one person they've picked out for her, and she doesn't want to marry him. He is quite forceful, so just be aware that there are some scenes in here that might cause some discomfort for people. Now in this book, towards the beginning, I really liked the setting. I honestly felt like I was transported to a different time and to a different place. I thought the descriptions of the land that she visits, Everwood, are really beautiful, very wintry, really get you into the Christmas spirit. And then from the middle point, things really started to fall apart for me personally. They tried to do almost a rebellion kind of thing, but it all happened very quickly. And then there wasn't really any reasoning for the bad guy to be a bad guy. I felt that the main sort of battle was not done excellently. It just felt very, very rushed, at the same time as feeling as if it was going very slowly. So there might be some people out there that really enjoy this book. Personally for me, it just didn't hit all of the right marks. However, I really, really liked the beginning. I thought it was done really well. If it had just been cut off there, I would have been more than happy with it. So for me, it's very average. It gets a 3-star rating. As I say, there might be some people out there that really enjoy this, so don't discount it just because I didn't enjoy it. The next book that I read within one day very, very easily. I've been seeing it absolutely everywhere and I totally get why people are recommending it. It is She and Her Cat by Makoto Shinkai. This is such a sweet short story following, I think, 4 different cats and 4 different owners, how their lives intertwine and their relationships with each other. It does deal with death a fair bit, which I feel like a lot of the translated Japanese cat-focused fiction that I've been reading does focus on that area. But I think it's really good for me as someone who really struggles with death and mortality. Good for me to read it in these kind of books because obviously you've got the cat aspect, which makes it very sweet. They're all very short stories, so they're not too intense when it talks about mortality. But yeah, this was just such a sweet story. I definitely recommend picking up for yourself, or maybe as a little gift for someone as a stocking filler. Obviously the front cover is adorable and so is the content. So this one got a 4-star rating for me. It didn't hit as hard as some of the other translated works that I read with similar subjects. For example, If Cats Disappeared from the World and The Travelling Cat Chronicles. Not to compare it to those, but if you did like those books, then you probably really like this one. It just didn't hit as hard for me, so I could only give it a 4-star as opposed to a 5. But please definitely pick this up if you've been interested in it. And then the last book that I finished in the month of November was an audiobook, and that was The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher. My first experience with this author's writing, and I really, really enjoyed the way it was written. However, again, I listened to it as an audiobook and I really, really, really hated the narrator for this one. Definitely not my cup of tea. I found it really hard to listen to. However, the story itself I think had very good potential, so perhaps if I'd have actually physically read it, it would have given me more feelings. In this story, we're following a young woman who goes to empty out her grandmother's house. Her grandmother's recently passed away, and as she's clearing this house out with her dog, strange things start to come to light. So this is definitely a spooky book, which I don't read a lot of. Would have been really perfect for Halloween, to be honest, but I only saw that it was on Libby during November, so it was a bit late then. But I'm glad that I listened to it anyway. This book, I think the concepts are there. I don't think necessarily the character development was there for me. I didn't really enjoy the main character. I thought she was sort of a bad person. But I do know that some people like reading characters like that. Just for me personally, I wish I would have been rooting for them a little bit more. The only character I ended up rooting for was the dog. But if you are looking for a relatively short spooky book steeped in nature as opposed to a ghost story with nothing that is too gory but with some very creepy scenes in there, I do think that you'd enjoy this one. Just for me personally, I really wish that I would have physically read it as opposed to listening to it as an audiobook. Just felt like it didn't sink in the way that I wanted it to, and as I say, I didn't absolutely love the main character. However, that one I would still give a 3-star rating. I think the story is really good, and perhaps in a couple years time I can reread it as a physical book, but we will see. So yeah, those are all of the books that I read in November. I thought I had a really bad reading month, but I don't think I did. I think I read a fair bit considering everything that was going on. Again, thank you so much for your patience in terms of how long this video has taken for me to get out. Please let me know if you've read any of the books that I read and what you thought to them, or if you have any that are on your TBR that you're excited to read. But that is everything from me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!